Hey everyone, welcome back to 20 Side Adventures. My name's Ryan. I have been fighting a terrible flu for the past 5 or 6 days. I was debating even getting on to make this video about the playtest, but then about 3 hours ago, Piso dropped an addition, a change, a correction to the errata they put out, and given we had so much discourse about it on this channel, I was like, well, heck, I gotta make a video now, and if I'm gonna get out here and suffer anyways, I might as well talk about the playtest and my initial reactions on it. So, first and foremost, Piso has seen the pitchforks and torches and the anger concerning the instances of damage and how weaknesses and resistances work, and they have decided to reverse course. And in this post here, which you can find a copy on Reddit, you can find this on their main forums, they essentially said, hey, we're getting rid of the clarification and we're going to play the game the way that you guys think it should be played. And they are going to address it in their errata blog for spring, which is coming up. But for now, they've essentially said just go back to doing it how it was. One line in particular I want to highlight here that has me a little concerned is resistance to all damage still works as written, but will be reviewed during the process for consistency with any other revisions. I just hope we don't get a big Champions nerf coming, because I think Champions resistance across all the different types of damage coming in makes that ability really shine, and I would hate to see that change and we have to get all those pitchforks and whatnot out again. Now, I, for one, didn't have a problem with the change. My table doesn't play in a manner where everyone was going to stack the same type of damage. I'm sure we would maximize it from time to time, but also I would just start throwing characters out there that don't get hurt by spirit damage or whatever it might be. It's a very easy thing, I felt, to get around as a GM if you had a party that was being real nasty about it. But that all being said, Piso listened to the very many complaints out there and have reversed course. And most opinions that I've seen online, people are pretty pleased with. Now, part two. We got a very quick announcement. We're getting 2 more classes. I don't know if these are the classes we asked for or the classes we need, but they're clearly the classes we deserve. I wasn't going to initially make this video because I don't know if it's just the cold and the flu and the foggy head, but on first read through of both of these, I just had kind of grumpy old man syndrome and I just didn't like them and I don't understand why we're getting them. Having reread it to do this video really quick and thought about it a bit more, they're fine. And I just go back to my initial premise with Piso that they don't have to make a banger class every time. They just have to make a class that a few people are interested in, and it gives you more options to play. And these both really do that. I do still have some of my concerns or my complaints about them, and I'm going to share that with you guys. And this isn't going to be a super feat by feat in depth, mainly because it's playtest. It might change. I'll do a more robust video when we get a final version. But if you haven't had a chance to look at it, or if you were under a rock and didn't know 2 new classes were coming out, this will give you just a real quick overview of them both, along with just my thoughts on them. So the first is the Daredevil, and we have a creator Discord where a lot of us sit and chatter back and forth about Piso things and what we're doing. And Cyprime Gaming said today that if Jackie Chan was made into a class, this would be it. And when I finally got around to reading it, that could not have been more true to me in my mind. It is a martial class that is all about like the moving, the weaving, the jumping around, the using the props, grabbing whatever's next to you, hitting this guy with it, spinning around this person and shoving off of this wall to move faster over here, to trip this person, to kick that person in the head, to knock that guy over, to topple the library shelves all on top of the person at the end. Like, it is all over the place. But it is going to fulfill that fantasy well if that's something you've always wanted to be doing with a class. Key attributes are strength or dex, 8+ cons. So you're going to be like, okay on the hit points. You kind of have some swashbuckler flair to you in this. You're constantly on the move. You're constantly putting yourself in danger. You laugh off the cuts and the bruises, and you're just always looking for that next big high or big trick. And it's kind of funny because it uses a mechanic very much like Panache, but it is called Adrenaline. You will get certain activities with the risky trait, not to be confused with the bravado trait, that will generate your adrenaline, that will then fuel your ability to do other activities. Now, unlike the swashbuckler, though there are still some similarities here, the Daredevil is really going to lean into using press activities, which require them to be the second action or your second and third activity. So you're going to get a lot of upside on your second and third multiple attack penalty instead of trying to maximize that first attack like a lot of other classes do. So that'll be kind of an interesting way to approach gameplay and your general skill rotations, I think. You come with this daring stunt ability out the gate, which you can use once per round, where essentially you get to make a stride. And as long as you've moved 10 feet or greater with that stride, which could also be a leap, you can then attempt a grapple, reposition, shove, or trip of one enemy within your reach. So as long as you're moving, you're getting free maneuver checks, which I think that's pretty cool. Audacious Combatant, you're getting a reduction on your multiple attack penalty from 5 to 4, or if you're using an agile weapon from 4 to 3, and then that also goes with the second multiple attack penalty as well. Now, because you're going to be moving a ton, they are giving you Die Hard, as well as a boost on the treat wounds or battle medicine ability. So they're kind of expecting you to maybe get the shit kicked out of you a little bit with this class. And they want to make sure you're not just getting killed and you can heal up a little bit easier. You also get a free additional first level feat, so that's kind of nice. This is going to be a very feat heavy class, as that is quite apparent. You can also do this propelling stride where you get a 10-foot bonus to your movement speed when you get to push off something around you. Again, think about Jackie Chan moving around in his movies between objects. You are definitely doing that. And then you also have this very interesting stunt damage where if you use a prop or you knock into someone or you force them to move, but they get interrupted because you pushed them into a wall, and they will take this stunt damage, which is 1d6 plus your strength bludgeoning damage. There's also quite a few feats where you just get to deal this damage, which you'll note there's no saves or any other modifiers. This is just damage you get to drop on folks. So that could be pretty interesting as well. Key terms they want you to be aware of: flourish, which means if it's a flourish, you can only do one flourish activity per round. Press means it has to be a second activity. You have to have a multiple attack penalty to use a press activity. There's a lot of press activities, so keep that one in mind. Prop is another one where this is kind of up to your GM, and I generally am not a huge fan of these kind of rules where it's kind of like you can do whatever as long as your GM says that thing is fine. So a prop can be anything large and sturdy enough for you to push yourself off of. This includes a creature that is larger than you, or a wall, or a column, or a durable terrain feature, ultimately up to your GM. And so I just don't like getting in that trap where the player's constantly like, is this a prop? Is this a prop? Is this a prop? Is this a prop? And I'm constantly having to decide if yes or no. I get that a lot with the investigators. Some of their key feats just require the GM to think especially for that one player at the table, and I'm just not a fan of those kind of design concepts. And then risky, we already kind of mentioned. Risky is what's going to allow you to generate adrenaline, to have adrenaline on hand to do your special activities as a Daredevil. At third, you're not going to be able to be caught off guard by creatures that are your level or lower. You're also going to get bonuses when you incur attacks of opportunity because clearly they're expecting you to do that a lot. Pretty standard upgrades from there. Stunt flexibility at 9th is pretty interesting, where that free first level feat you got can now be traded out for any feat that is 6th level or lower, so long as it has the risky trait. And you can do that during your daily preparation. So that's kind of cool. You're dipping into that fighter idea of getting the feats you need for the objective at hand. And then at 15th, this improves to where it can be 8th level or lower, and you get a second feat that can be the follow-up to what you choose at the 8th level, and that can go up to 14th. So that means you now get 2 feats instead of 1, and they can be a prerequisite for the other. Some of the feats: Bold Bluff allows you to add the risky trait onto feint. This will be very reminiscent of the Swashbuckler, where you add the bravado trait onto a variety of different activities that maybe didn't come that way. Breakaway attack is a single action that is a flourish, and it is risky, so this will generate your adrenaline. But describe here using the environment around you, throwing a pot or pan, kicking a loose post to make a scaffolding fall, slamming a door open or shut, and you interact with the described object and make a melee range strike with it as appropriate for your description. Any fundamental runes you have in your hand wraps of mighty blows might apply to this strike. A melee strike has the finesse deadly d8 traits and deals 1d8 bludgeoning damage. And if you make it a ranged strike, it's deadly d10, has the propulsive trait, and deals 1d6 bludgeoning damage. So you can just weaponize anything around you with that feat, which I think is kind of cool. Don't mess with me as a way to intimidate someone else when you get a critical hit on an enemy. So you just pummel your enemy, they get the crit, you look at their friend over there and you kind of let them know they're next, though it's not their next because that requires you to kill them. Completely different. And then there's feats that I just like, I kind of grasp, but I'm also like, man, that's so much work to get there. Flying hurdle stunt is an example. So this is press and risky, so it has to at least be your second action, and it's really just a method of moving to regain your adrenaline. However, the critical success also gives you a bonus on the melee strike against that target until the beginning of your next turn. Well, this is press, so it can't be your first attack, so it has to be your second attack. So that means if you get the critical success, the benefit is your -8 attack is now only a -7. Gee, thanks. I don't know. I just feel that is such a convoluted benefit to gain for this minimal movement ability to regain adrenaline that I just find it very interesting. Forceful kickoff stunt. Now, like, this is the one where, again, I just had total Jackie Chan vibes. Again, Prime Gaming, when he said that, it just is so many times I see it in all of these feats. But you plant a foot on the enemy's chest, pushing them away as you leap backwards. Attempt an acrobatics check against the fortitude DC. The creature within your reach. The target is pushed 15 feet away from you, and you get to leap away from the target, and this movement doesn't trigger reactions. If it's a success, it's the same as critical success, except the target is only pushed 5 feet. If you, on a failure, you leap away from the target, but you don't actually get to push them. And then critical failure backfires, you're off guard until the beginning of your next turn. So this is also a build where leaning into having more leap movement is clearly going to be something that is important. Pressing Pummel is a press attack that essentially just gives you Vicious Swing because you're getting an extra die of damage, though it is up to D10, so that might be more than whatever your normal weapon would come with. Or if you're just using fists, for example. Roaming Charge. This one's really interesting. It's 2 actions. You get to move twice, and you just get to move through enemies. So this will be a good way to get through crowded rooms, narrow dungeon tunnels, things of that nature. But everyone you just bounce into as you're moving through takes that stunt damage from before that I mentioned. Doesn't have any saves. So as long as you have adrenaline, you get to move 2 strides and you just get to knock everyone around as you're going and dish some damage out. Accompanying Strike is interesting. At 8, you used your previous action to make a melee strike with a one-handed weapon, and it missed. So now this is a press, you're taking your multiple attack penalty, but you swing it around for another blow, you make another strike with the same weapon, adding the backswing trait and increasing the damage die by 1 step. That's pretty interesting. We also have a knee people in the groin attack here, which can apply the sickened condition. And there's just lots of movement, hitting people, running around feats like that. So that was the Daredevil. It has some interesting concepts. I don't think it's a class I'm ever really going to be that interested in playing. I think there's some excellent feats on it if someone's wanting to build a grappler brawler style class, and I just somewhat worry it's going to almost become a better archetype choice than a main feat, but I hope I'm wrong about that. The Slayer is the next one, and the Slayer, I constantly kept saying to myself, doesn't a Thaumaturge kind of do this? And I wish the Slayer had a bit more differentiation on that front, but this is a strength or dex key attribute martial. It is 10 plus your con, so a lot of hit points. This one only has 2 new key terms, the relentless and the reinforced. Reinforced allows you to take your hunting trophies, so the Slayer is all about slaying monsters that have become your quarry, taking bits of them as trophies, and then using those trophies to augment your equipment. So reinforced are going to let you take those items and better reinforce your equipment. And then relentless is basically it is a unique reaction that you're going to get. And when you have something with the relentless trait and that reaction has been triggered, it grants you the quickened condition. Well, you're able to use relentless actions with that quickened action granted that can be combined into other relentless things. So that's a lot of words to say. Instead of just getting one action that can only be used for stride or strike, you can use it to do a single action relentless activity or as one of the actions in a 2 or 3 action relentless activity. And this is that action here called On the Hunt. You see your quarry be critically hit or any creature within 60 feet of you is reduced to 0 hit points. You can use this reaction, grant yourself the quickened condition or until the end of your next turn, and you can use it for step stride or with the relentless trait. You get Monster Lore, which is going to auto level up with you, and you're going to be all about recalling knowledge about the things you are slaying. Weird. You will then also get the Slayer's Arsenal, which is a bunch of unique equipment to help you be better at fighting monsters. Not to be confused with implements. They're totally a lot like implements, but they do work a little different. But they have the Blood-Seeking Blade, which is your weapon. The Chemist Vials, which is going to allow you to take little potions to augment yourself. Definitely like a Witcher. The Consecrated Panoply, which is going to be for a more religious-focused Slayer. You'll get a bunch of like little magical or little holy trinkets, and it'll give you the holy or the unholy trait if you want to go that direction. or you can get warded mail, which is armor to help you better hunt these monsters. You'll also get the activity to mark your quarry, which is going to give you some benefits to track them down, very similar to hunt prey. And then you can also get the claim trophy activity, which is after you've defeated your prey, you can attempt to get some trophies from them. Players get to kind of design the trophies. You'll notice they're going to get traits, damage types that they impart to your weapons, and then any traditions that come along with them. Slayers, you have to be really well versed on what you're taking, what the monster has that you're taking bits from. GMs, make sure you're just helping your Slayers out on this front. And then the reinforce your arsenal is during your daily preparation. This is what's going to allow you to apply your trophies to your equipment. 5th level, you're going to get assurance and automatic knowledge skill feats for your monster lore, so you can just be the best at figuring out what's up with the monsters. At 11, you can get a 2nd arsenal, which is a little slow in my mind. I thought maybe you'd get them a little quicker, but only 2 arsenal by level 11. As you get down here, you get into what these items give you more in depth. The bloodletting blade is going to allow you to ignore resistance equal to 1 plus the number of damage dice that the weapon does if something is resistance to slashing, for example, and it's a slashing weapon. You also gain 1d6 additional damage of one type based on the trophy that's attached to it, and then that damage increases at 11th and 19th. It also will grant you a 2-action honed strike, which is basically a +2 to hit and ignores the target's concealed conditions, if any, so that's kind of cool. And then at 7th, you're getting critical specialization with your signature tool. And then the benefit of the resistance now goes to any type of damage being dealt by it, not just the physical type. The Chemist Vials is a single action to drink, which is good for once per hour. And you gain the ability to detect your quarry within 30 feet as a precise sense for the next 10 minutes. So it's just, you get to track whatever it is, you just get to know it's there with a precise sense. You also gain 1 special vision ability based on the creature trophy that you had claimed. So if a creature had dark vision, you now have dark vision, or they give you the Cloud Giant's Cloud Sight as an example. The Ignition Vial, this is a 2-action where you drink an Ignition Vial and then blow a cloud of deadly energy from your mouth in a 15-foot cone, dealing 2d4 fire damage, and it increases 1d4 every 3 levels. And with a different trophy, you can change the type of energy damage you're doing. And then at 7, you can change these up to using them once per round, so you can get a lot out of them instead of once per minute. Panoply here, while you're wearing the signature tool, the charm grants you a +1 bonus to all your saving throws against your quarry. And when it's reinforced, you get a +1 status bonus to saving throws against any creatures with the trait of the trophy you are using with it. And then as a single action, they will give you these slaying spikes. So you get to draw these spikes and you can just drive them into people, and they are consecrated with either the holy or the unholy trait. And then at 7, the hunting spikes function as +1 striking daggers. In addition, they're treated as either cold iron or silver, chosen when you reinforce your arsenal. And then at higher levels, they can be adamantium instead. Interestingly enough, if you take this crossbow slayer feat, you can load those spikes into the crossbow and shoot things with them. And then if you choose the fortified mail, you gain 2 plus the value of the armor's potency runes in damage resistance against your quarry. You also gain 1 plus half your level to one of the trophy's damage types in resistance. So if your trophy does fire damage, you now get fire resistance. You can also use this armored shelter, so you're going to get a +2 bonus to AC and reflex save against area effects until you move from your current space or use an attack action, whichever comes first. And then at 7th level, you gain access to armor specialization effects of this signature tool, and the initial benefit grants resistance to all damage dealt by your quarry. In addition, you can don or doff the signature tool as a single interact action. So that's kind of cool, getting in and out of your armor. That's usually a lot harder for others. By and large, though, I don't know why you would take anything but the weapon as your first implement. I just don't see it. There's more options. Unless you're going that crossbow route and you wanted the holy spikes, maybe that would make sense. A lot of the feats are focused on augmenting the tools that you've taken. So like the spike surcoat requires the warded mail signature tool. Paired bloodseekers requires you the blood seeking blade signature tool, and this is going to allow you to be a 2-weapon slayer if that's something you want, or peculiar weaponry if you want to have some special advanced weaponry. There's also a lot of actions that really let you do the on the hunt more frequently than just that reaction. So for example, at 4, you can get Blood Rush, which is a free action to just get to use it at the start of a round with an initiative order. You also have Relentless Counterstrike, which is a reaction assuming you have some sort of defensive posture up, where you get to go on the hunt as a free action after you have deflected the attack. So there's lots of little feats sprinkled in here to get you that quickened activity happening more frequently. This class, more than many, really does have feats that follow a very set path depending on which of your implements you have taken as well as just lots of prerequisites for previous feats. And that's kind of interesting. And the constant ability to gain yourself the quick hit activity could be pretty unique. By and large, though, I really feel like this is just doing a lot of the same things that the Thaumaturge already does. Oh, also, things like spell slates. There is ways to grant yourself magic as this class and get a few spells with some feats. Let's see, where's the first one? Here we go. Spell slates. You've learned how to expend your magical tricks with a set of specially prepared charms or runes. Weird. Which you gain as a secondary tool. You gain a first rank common occult spell and a second rank common occult spell as innate spells, each of which you can cast once per day. If you, however, have taken the sacred objects, you can make them divine instead of occult. I thought that was pretty cool. But again, that also just feels like a lot of what Thaumaturge is doing, where it can use magical scrolls to simulate magic, where it has a couple feats to gain some spells that it just knows. I don't know. By and large, I would have maybe rather seen this tweak the Thaumaturge as a class archetype, maybe, instead of being its own class. Given the Inquisitor got relegated to a class archetype from first edition, I don't think Slayer is that impressive that it didn't become an archetype, or Inquisitor didn't, but that just might be my own bias, as Inquisitor was one of my favorite classes from first edition. So guys, that's the news. I just wanted to go over this a little bit with you. They're fine. There's nothing really wrong with them. I don't understand why we're getting them. I would rather see classes be much more diverse and unique and not be able to draw so many quick parallels to things we already have if we're going to get new classes. But again, if someone out there is excited about them and this makes you want to play Pathfinder a little bit more because this helps you lean into a character fantasy you haven't been able to do yet, then I'm here for it. So with that, I'm going to wish you guys a fantastic time on your 20-side adventures. We'll catch you next time.